At some point, when push comes to shove, as America starts to decline, even more so than it is right now, in many cities, like in New York, you're going to see black crime like you've never seen before. There's a lot of videos, especially nowadays, and people will say, there's something I find often in common in many of these videos. And it's typically because it's usually a group of black people committing violence, destroying private property, and hurting individuals. And of course, in the Twitter comment section, it will always be, well, I wonder what happened that set them off. We don't know the whole story. But often you don't see videos like that of Hispanics. You typically don't see large groups of Hispanic people acting this way. And you don't see it typically among many whites. On a rare occasion you might, but overwhelmingly people often say a lot of these crimes have something very much in common. And typically it's the skin color of the individuals who are creating those incidences. And I understand why many law-abiding black Americans don't say anything, and it's because they're equally as afraid of those individuals, because they know that if they start to speak up about what's going on in their neighborhood, they know that they'll get retaliated against by those same individuals within their neighborhood. And so typically all these defund the police end up with more black people being killed. Unarmed individuals who aren't able to protect themselves are rendered at the mercy of those who want to commit acts of crime. Now, the leftist government, which is often very weak, utilizes fear so that they can obviously gain more control. There's always this talk about gun control, we need gun reform, etc. But typically when you look in many of the neighborhoods where you see such violence, it's often turn a blind eye when it comes to black neighborhoods. And it's because it just doesn't fit their agenda. And so moving forward, as America continues to enter a decline, you're going to see more acts of violence coming out of the black community, especially in places like in New York and in Minneapolis and Chicago or whatever other city that has large populations of black Americans. You're going to see crime like you've never seen before. And the calls for the police will go unanswered. Many of the police officers will either leave the job for fear of the government reprisal, because government utilizes these individuals as a scapegoat or as a shield to bring about whatever agenda that it is. Whatever their agenda is, they'll say, well, if you don't love black people, or if you don't love the gay people or the trans people, etc., well then, you're not for this. If you're not for, they'll say something like, black people are impacted by climate change, and if you're not for climate change, then you're a racist, bigot, trans, homophobe, or whatever it is. And that's just because they have an agenda. And they hold up whatever small group and they just utilize them as a shield. But moving forward, I could definitely see how the government can utilize Americans who, when you start to see this happen, and individuals start to take it into their own hands to defend themselves, that you have to have a community to back you to fight the police. Because when push comes to shove, the police are going to come for you if you choose to protect yourself as a result of the mob. And I'm going to show you a clip. It's like a 2-minute clip of an incident that happened most recently in New York of a store owner that got attacked for $1.75. This whole incident that you'll watch took place over $1.75 worth of goods. And so some people will say, well, you see, the business could have avoided this if they had just given away, the $1.75 worth of stuff. They could have avoided this whole problem. And this is typically the mentality that you'll find among many leftist individuals. There's no personal responsibility. There's no accountability. And so the government loves that. The government likes these individuals because they're pro-state. Now, of course, moving forward, it would not surprise me where police officers will be utilized to come for you and to come for your guns. Because at the end of the day, just like in the time of Germany, right? Those officers were like, I'm just doing my job. And you've heard that today. Many officers, and in many countries, you look at what happened in Canada or what happened in Australia, where they had the camps. And many of these officers were just like, well, I'm just doing my job. This is what the government tells me. It's just another day in the office, as they say. And so if it results in you losing your life, you going to jail, you being, falsely accused of something, of racism because you were trying to protect yourself, the result is you're going to need a community. now more than ever. More important than money, you're going to need a community to back you. Because when push comes to shove, the police officers are going to come and they're going to try to take your guns away. Because when the when you're organized and you're willing to fight back, the government is going to be like, we need to take their guns away, because they'll eventually fight back against us. And when that time comes, you're going to have to make a choice. Which end of the gun are you going to give that police officer that comes knocking at your door? Just like what happened during COVID. When business owners wanted to stay open because the Walmart across the street was allowed to stay open, or whatever other big business was allowed to stay open, but you had to shut your doors, it wasn't a politician that came knocking at your business. It was a police officer with a gun willing to shoot you, willing to take you to jail, willing to take your rights away. And many people, unfortunately, did not fight back. But the opportunity to peacefully push back against the government is coming to an end, because the government is out of money. And when the government is out of money and they're not able to give the gimmies that many of these groups that are basically dependent upon the government, they're eventually going to spill into your neighborhoods, and they're going to come looking for you, and they're going to come looking for your stuff, because you got to pay your fair share. And typically it starts in those neighborhoods, and those individuals go door to door. Once food becomes scarce or becomes too expensive and then they can't afford it, they'll go to the local businesses, they'll go to the supermarkets, just like what you see in California, right? You see these people, they just walk right into the store. There's mass groups of young black kids just running right into Macy's and other stores. And for the most part, the police don't do anything, because you have these governors and these other politicians that are completely, because it's an agenda. And they utilize these individuals, and they become their shield. But at some point, the people are going to have to take a stand. And it's not just going to be against those willing to commit crimes in the neighborhood. It's going to be against the police. And at some point, it might even be against the military. And you're going to have to make a choice where you stand, because it's basically going to be, as they say, go time. It's purge day. It's, as they say, it's time to go to war. And there will be a war at some point in America. I have no doubt. There's no way that you can have such far left and right leaning schools of thought that exist within one country, that exist under one law, basically swinging back and forth between who holds sway over the government. It's going to happen. Anyway, take a look at that clip. It's about 2 minutes, and it's just basically a glimpse of more to come. And I hope that you're ready.